Okay, so we're going to be setting this up now so we can get a nice graph to show a visual representation of our data, which is a really nice way to show collections of information in a way that's a little bit easier for people to understand. So what I'm going to do to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to duplicate some of the values that I've got over here on the left-hand side. I'm going to redo them on the right-hand side just so it's a little bit more simple and straightforward to create a graph. So to start off with, I'm going to select the cell M4. I'm going to type in equals, and I'm just going to click on B12. And when I press enter, that just copies whatever is in this cell, B12, it'll copy it directly over to M4 because up here I've told it to be equaling that B12. So that's one of the handy little features of being able to do formulas. It allows you to duplicate. And just to give you an example of one of the benefits of that is that if I over here got rid of the word cost and pressed enter, that copies over here. You'll also notice that it hasn't bolded this, so it's only copied across the value, which can be handy. So it allows us to have a little bit of freedom in how we have things, how they look. So I've got my travel cost. I'm going to go down and do the same, so accommodation. The next category will be activities. And then we've got food, local transport, miscellaneous. And finally, I'm going to type in an extra one and I'm going to call that spare. Now, you can see that some of these are going a little bit over the edge of the cell, so I'm going to click up and drag to make my column just a little bit bigger. And you'll notice that as I move my cursor around, it goes from being a large white plus symbol, then up here it turns into an arrow, and when I go over to the little barrier here, it becomes this double-sided arrow, which is what I need in order to be able to adjust a column. So now none of the writing's going over the top. Now my travel cost, I'm going to do a similar thing. I'm going to type equals, and then I'm going to select D12 and press enter. Accommodation, similar thing. I've already calculated that out, so my accommodation is $587.70. Nice and easy. Now, activities is where I'm going to do a slightly different formula. So for activities, I have 3 different activities that were listed over here. So I'm going to say that that equals G27 plus G28, and I'll also add in G29 even though that is 0. And then I press enter. So that's now given me the total cost for the activities. Now my food is a little bit more straightforward. These were the ones where we're just guessing a value. And local transport, same for that. And lastly, we've got miscellaneous, so $250 there. Now, my spare is going to be my remaining funds. It's what's left over when there is nothing else. We've purchased everything. We've covered our travel, we've covered our accommodation, food, activities, transport, and any random miscellaneous things. So that will equal the calculated field down here on H33. It'll be a little bit different on yours, depends upon where you've laid things out in your spreadsheet. So now that I've got everything summarized over here, I can highlight it all, so I'll do that again. I left click up here and I drag it down to select everything. I can go to my insert menu and you'll notice there are a bunch of different graphs and charts that you can select from here. Now I want to show the breakdown of the full $1,500 budget that I've got. So in that situation, something like a pie chart or a pie graph is perfectly fine. So I'm going to click on that one. And then this gives me a visual representation of where my money is going. So I can make this larger. I can also double click and select different parts of it. So it could be, give it a title, something along the lines of where $1,500 is spent. Close out of that. There are other settings I can play around with, but then we can see down here we've got the key. So this is a really large chunk here, and this is telling me that that's accommodation. So that is where I'm spending most of my money, which makes sense. As we go through, we've got $587.70, which is more than what I spent on my travel costs. It's more than what I spent on anything else. Now, where Excel starts becoming really powerful is if I change any of these values, it'll automatically update. Not only just my calculations will update, but also my visual representations will update as well. So if suddenly my travel costs become really cheap, there's a special on, they're dropped by $200, so they become ridiculously cheap. So let's change this to being, instead of 303, I'm going to type in 103, and then when I press enter, it all updates. So now I've got $229.35 remaining, plus also my graph is updated. So I'm going to put that back to where it was, 303, press enter, and it puts back to the way it was looking beforehand. So that's how we can create a visual version of your data. We're using all of these values up here, which have been sourced directly from my slightly nicer laid out version over here. But that's it. So try that out, see how you go. You can experiment with different types of graphs, but as I said before, for this particular purpose, where we're figuring out where $1,500 is spent, a pie graph it works really well.